What's good, everybody? We are back with another Call of Duty mobile video. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. In today's video, we are going to be going over the top 5 guns in Call of Duty mobile in season number 7. Now, normally I would wait longer into the season to make this type of video, but as most of you know, I did a 24-hour stream at the start of the season, which I feel like gives me a pretty good grip on which guns are dominating in the game, and I've also casted 2 days of Omen Challenger Series games, so that is essentially 8 full matches of watching pro players use each of these guns. So I feel like those two factors combined give me a pretty good take on what the best guns in the game are. And while some of this list is going to be opinion based, I'm also going to do my best to back it up with facts as well. If you guys enjoy the video or find it helpful, make sure you drop a like down below, and also make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post Call of Duty mobile videos daily. Throughout the video, I am going to be pulling a lot of stats from a website called Hawksnest GG. Most of you have probably heard of it. If you haven't, there's a YouTuber named Hawksnest who does a lot of really in-depth videos and studies on different guns, so he's put together a whole website compiling all the statistics for all the guns in Call of Duty mobile. I'll be sure to link that down in the description if you guys want to check it out, but we'll be taking a lot of screenshots from there as kind of examples for some of the arguments that I'm making for these guns. Coming in at number 5, we do have 2 guns actually tied because they're effectively 2 different versions of the same gun, and those are the LK24 and the KN44. As you guys will see from these screenshots right here taken from Hawksnest's website, these 2 guns have the exact same time to kill at every range possible. So when it comes down to choosing between the LK and the KN, it really just depends on what your preferred recoil pattern is. I'll go ahead and throw those recoil patterns up on the screen, but effectively, you're choosing between the LK, which is a gun with higher vertical recoil but less horizontal recoil, especially off the start, and the KN44, which has less horizontal recoil, has less vertical recoil, but does have more horizontal recoil right off the bat. With the LK, you don't really see the horizontal recoil kick in until later in your spray. Apart from these 2 factors, these are basically 2 identical guns which have a lot of versatility. They have really good time to kills in long range, but don't obviously have the same time to kill that you would like to have in something like an SMG when it comes to the close range, which is part of the reason why they do come in at the 5 spot. Regardless, going into a gunfight against most SMGs and other assault rifles, if you're hitting your shots, you will be able to win those long and mid-range gunfights with these guns. But something we're going to be talking about later on in the video is how the current meta is what I would call an SMG meta, and we'll be given a couple different reasons for that. Neither of these guns received any type of buff or nerf, which is actually true of pretty much every gun on this list, so that's something to keep in mind. Most of the meta guns didn't receive buffs or nerfs outside of maybe the Pharaoh coming into the season, which is part of the reason the Pharaoh is not going to be included on this list. Next up at the 4th spot, we have the HBR, which is probably going to be the most controversial gun on this list just because there's so many varying opinions on this gun. So on the one hand, you have the people that think that this is the best gun in the game and that it's better than every single other gun on this list. I'll be explaining later on in the video while I would disagree with that just because of the SMG factor that we're going to talk about later. But there's also the group of people that are going to come in and say, oh, everybody way overhyped the HBR. It's actually a trash gun. It's no good. You shouldn't use the HBR, and if you do, you don't know what you're doing. Really, all of this is the result of too much hype around the HBR coming into the season, so there's not really a ton of people that are viewing it with an unbiased lens type of thing, I guess is the best way I could put it. First off, I want to go ahead and say there were rumors that the HBR was getting nerfed coming into the season. Those rumors were not true. The HBR is exactly the same as it was in Season 6. And just as it was in Season 6, the HBR is a really solid gun, but it can still get outgunned by other ones. Obviously, one of the big advantages is that it doesn't have a whole lot of horizontal recoil, which makes it really, really easy to control. However, the gun does struggle at longer ranges compared to guns like the LK24 and the KN44. So as you'll see in another graphic from Hawk's website, after 25 meters, in most situations, the HBR is going to get outgunned by the KN and the LK. So it's really at the 0 meter to 25 meter range that the HBR is specialized. But because it doesn't have the same mobility that SMGs have and also the same rate of fire, yes, it might be able to outgun SMGs in specific situations, but that requires you to hit every single one of your shots. And with the current ping situation and the way that ping plays different roles in different ways, a lot of times you'll get wonky hit registry. And so because of the current state of the game, most assault rifles just can't make it into those top 3 spots because you need a high rate of fire in order to compensate for the weird way that hit registry takes place. And so even though later on we'll see the HBR is actually able to outgun some of the SMGs statistically, the way that it actually plays out most of the time will give the advantage to an SMG. Regardless, the HBR is a really solid gun and one of the fastest time to kills in close to medium range for assault rifles. Because of that, I would consider it the best assault rifle in the game, but not the best gun in the game. Next up, at the number 3 spot, we do have the RUS-79U. Now, this is a gun that has been really reliable and consistent basically throughout the entire history of Call of Duty Mobile. Ever since Season 1, it's been considered one of the top guns in the game. And despite a lot of nerfs that have come its way, it's still, in my opinion, and I would say in most pros' opinion, is a top 3 weapon in the game. Potentially top 2, depending on who you ask, but for this list's sake, I am going to give it the number 3 spot just because of the alternatives that you have at what I would consider to be the number 1 and 2 guns in the game. So one thing you probably noticed as we were talking about the HBR is that up to about 15, or really, I guess closer to 13 meters, that HBR actually outguns the RUS. But after that, the RUS beats it in time to kill at every other range. This is crazy to think about when you consider the fact that typically assault rifles are meant to be oriented for long-range gunfights and SMGs are meant to be for close-range gunfights. The RUS has fantastic time to kills at every possible range, which means it's always going to be a good option regardless of what game mode you're playing. So whether you're playing hardpoint on Summit and taking tons of close-range gunfights, or whether you're playing domination on firing range and you have a lot of long angles, the RUS can dominate in every possible situation. Because of its high rate of fire, it's able to compensate for the weird hit registry that a lot of people are experiencing this season, and because of that, you'll see it used not only in ranked, but by a lot of pro players in Call of Duty Mobile. Now, I know a lot of you at this point are probably thinking, Bobby, all you've had so far are good things to say about the RUS. How is it not the number 1 gun in the game? And that's primarily because of the guns that I'm about to introduce and how ridiculously OP they are, especially if they are used in the proper situations. So at the number 2 spot, we do have the QQ9, but for all intents and purposes in this video, I'm going to call it the MP5 because that's what it is, and it was simply not named that in the game, I'm assuming because of copyright issues. People that have been playing Call of Duty Mobile for a while now might recognize the feel of the MP5, and that is because it's basically this season's version of the Season 2 MSMC, with the biggest primary difference being that it has very minimal damage drop-off, which means it can actually be viable at long ranges. If we look at the comparison for time to kill for the MP5 versus the RUS beats it at every single range except for a really small range right in between 13 and 18 meters. Everything beyond that, in pure time to kill, the MP5 does win, especially at 0 to 7 meters, where it has 216 milliseconds for its time to kill if you hit all your shots. That is insanely fast and by far the best time to kill for any non-burst or shotgun weapon. Because of this factor, the MP5 is the best close-range weapon in the game just because of the fact that you don't have to worry about hitting a follow-up shot with a shotgun. Same with a follow-up burst with the Pharaoh. 216 milliseconds for a fully automatic time to kill is just ridiculously OP. Because of that, even though it's a brand new gun, we've already seen a lot of pro players use it in the Omen Challenger series, and a lot of them have been dominating with it. Now, the one big downside with the MP5 is that it has a really high amount of recoil. That's the primary reason that I would compare it to the MSMC in Season 2, because that also had a high amount of recoil, but most pros were able to master that recoil and be able to dominate with it in spite of it. However, that recoil factor does make it more difficult to use at longer ranges, so if you want to be able to get long-range kills with the MP5, you're going to more than likely need to tap fire, which is obviously going to put you at a disadvantage going up against another player that might have a gun that they're able to full auto at long range. That's the main reason that I have this gun at the number 2 spot and not the number 1 spot, because it does lack a certain amount of versatility that you would like to be able to see in a gun, and it makes it so that there are specific maps that it's not quite as usable on, such as crossfire or firing range. And then coming in at the number 1 spot, probably not a surprise to most of you, but to some of you it might be, we do have the Cordite. Now there's a lot of reasons that the Cordite comes in at the number 1 spot, but for those of you that aren't aware, I'll go ahead and list those off. Number 1, the Cordite has the most broken hipfire in the game. Basically, up to 10 meters, there's no need for you to ADS because your hipfire is going to be just about as accurate as if you were ADSing. This means when it comes to rounding a corner, you don't have to worry about the ADS time of the gun, which actually is relatively slow, but is more for compensated by the fact that you can just go ahead and press your shoot button rather than having to take the time to ADS and then shoot. Then on top of that, you can look at the fact that the Cordite has a faster time to kill than the RUS at every single possible range, and the only guns that can outgun it, at least on the list that we've made right here, are the MP5 and the HBR. Yes, technically the MP5 can outgun the Cordite at every single range, but you also have to take into account that the MP5 has massive amounts of recoil, whereas the Cordite has very, very minimal recoil. While both have pretty minimal horizontal recoil, the Cordite's recoil is definitely much more steady and controllable, whereas with the MP5, it kicks up a ton at the beginning, and then after that, starts to become more controllable. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, that hipfire factor is the number 1 thing that does make the Cordite the best gun in the game, because it completely eliminates that factor of needing to ADS at that 0 to 10 meter range. You can basically bulldoze your way into a hard point, pre-firing the whole way, because the default amount of bullets in the Cordite is 40, which once again is more than any other SMG outside of the PDW, which isn't on this list. If you throw a long barrel on that sucker, it basically becomes an AR that you can hip fire all day long up to 10 meters and makes it the most broken gun in Call of Duty Mobile. It's all of these reasons that right now, anytime you hop into an Omen Challenger Series game, more than likely you're going to see somewhere between 6 and 8 Cordites in play at one time. It's gotten to the point where most pro players complain about the gun all the time, and more than likely we are going to see at least a shadow nerf coming to it soon, because if we don't, that's all that we're going to see up in legendary tiers of the Call of Duty Mobile Championships. But obviously, that does round out our top spot for the top 5 guns in Call of Duty Mobile. Hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, drop a like down below, and also make sure to subscribe if you guys haven't already. We'll have lots more Call of Duty Mobile videos coming at you guys soon, and I'll see you guys next time.